Simon, I don't know where you stand on this. I have a rough idea, but bear with me on it because I think it's fairly well intended. The Tottenham Supporters Trust, you remember, quite recently,
yes,
tried and failed to get a session with Daniel Levy or even Joel Lewis, and they wanted some answers to questions.
They did indeed, after writing a charter.
That's right. Now, they're concerned about the direction or lack of direction that the football club is taking at this time, and they say, look, we want you to answer some questions. It's all with the best of intentions. They failed then, so now they've gone public. And what they've done is they've sent us a list of 11 questions, in actual fact, that they want Levy and the rest to answer. And they feel that their questions are well-founded, they think they're well-researched, and they want answers to questions like...
Well, they would, wouldn't they?
Well, have a listen. Questions like, there is a widespread feeling of a lack of direction at the club. What is your vision for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club? What are your objectives? How are you measuring progress against those objectives? Another one, can you expand on Daniel Levy's comment on restoring the DNA of the club and provide examples of how that is being achieved? And on it goes. In other words, they want to get inside the heads of the people who make the decisions at the club. Why are you making the decisions and what direction is the club going in? Mm-hmm. Are these just entitled fans or are they asking valid questions of the ownership?
I think that they didn't help themselves when they made that ridiculous set of observations that they made at the time when fan relationship with clubs was at the foremost because of the ESL in terms of how the influence was perceived that fans were changing the direction of football. Yeah. And they came out with this Magna Carta-like scroll of things that they thought they were entitled to ask. What benefit is wisdom if it doesn't profit the wise?
Right.
What do they get from this information? Insofar as Daniel Levy tells them the answers to the questions. You know, obviously Daniel Levy wants the football club to be successful. There'll be a difference of opinion what they think success looks like. So Daniel Levy turns around and says, in the event that he answers, which he won't, I want the club to be punching its weight and be successful. What does that give them? What answers does it, what benefit does that give them? What benefit is it?
Well, it gives them the satisfaction of a response.
Sure. And there is an element of the fact that I do actually agree with the principle of fans' forums. I do agree that it is, incumbent upon football owners, despite my protestations the other day about the media demanding owners come out once a year or twice a year and address the audience.
Yeah, but that would solve it.
I believe in the principle. Well, it wouldn't. It would set up another set of questions and set up another set of entitlements, and you'd never be able to answer people because unless your team plays and wins the things that football fans think it should win, then you'll never be able to answer the question because there will always be another question after you've answered the first question and then the next question and the next question.
I get that, Simon, but look at question 8. Supporters made their opposition to the proposed European Super League clear. Can you give us a guarantee the club will not support any attempt to revive that or any similar project? That's a virtual yes or no.
No, not really, because it's nuanced by depends upon the circumstances. If the circumstances arrive again and there's a meritocracy-based situation in the European Super League, absolutely most football clubs of any significance would want to be part of it. What you're trying to get is binary sound bites that will get dragged into the public domain by the fans who can't be trusted with certain information, and all of a sudden you'll have a set of agendas being played out against a question that was asked to get an answer that has no benefit to anybody. If I'm Daniel Levy, I would not answer that question because I would say it depends upon the circumstances.
Would you answer this one? Can you give us an update on the stadium naming rights?
Well, it's irrelevant.
Why?
But what relevance is that? I mean, hold on a second. You've had a crappy stadium, right, for years. You've now got a beautiful stadium, and now the big question is, what's the naming rights? When they've done a deal for the naming rights, they'll tell the fans.
That's what they're asking, though. When can we expect you to announce when you've done a deal?
When we've done it.
Well, what's the harm in asking?
Because maybe your negotiations are at a sensitive stage. Maybe you're trawling around with a set of parameters that you want to keep behind closed doors and you want to announce a name. Whatever football fans don't know, they seem to think it's their entitlement to know. So we're now moving to a territory, and I'm going off piece for a second here. All of a sudden, if your training ground isn't at a certain level, that's an appalling crime, and fans are entitled to know why the training ground isn't at the level that it should be at, because XYZ club has a training ground at a certain level.
There's no questions about training ground here because they're happy with the training ground.
Exactly.
I mean, question 5, are you aware there's a widely held perception that football is not the priority at Tottenham? What would you say to Spurs fans who feel that way?
Look, I mean, these questions...
What's wrong with that?
These questions are questions that I can't help but think, and I can't use the word, that people are being busy and I was going to use another word which I can't use, because they want information for information's sake.
They love their club, Simon.
And Daniel Levy understands.
They want assurances.
And Daniel Levy understands the brief is not to build a stadium that has all the cost implications of it, and not to have a team that's capable of elevating the club to a position where it warrants having such a stadium. Do you think he hasn't got that memo?
Why doesn't he say that?
Well, because Daniel has his own style of doing things. I'm not defending him. I think you should communicate with fans, but I don't think you have a God-given right to have a level of communication. I don't think you have a God-given right to say to somebody, what's the naming rights of the stadium? 5 years ago, football fans hadn't even heard of naming rights.
The bare,
and now all of a sudden
minimum,
they've got to know about them.
Simon, come on, be honest with me. The bare minimum, these are all fair questions, 11 of them. The bare minimum is a response. Say the response from Levy is, do you know what? We've taken into account what you're asking, but at this time, we're not going to get involved in dialogue with you, but continue to support the great club.
If you look at the mechanism that these guys are trying to deploy, I sat here with you 4 or 5 months ago, and we watched all these fans groups revving their engines up on the basis of the European Super League, and it gave them their head about how important they were. The real reason why the European Super League didn't get off the ground was because there was not enough finance raised behind it, but the fans were a part. The fans
had a big part.
They were a part of it. Believe me, Jim, with respect, if they'd have got Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan, whoever was funding it, to put up 15 billion, rather than the 5 that they originally got to put up, this deal would have happened. But irrespective of that, look at the way the Tottenham fans, they went past every other fan trust and put out a charter of what they expected Daniel Levy and the Tottenham board to answer to. Look at the question number 11. It's driven towards agendas about fan ownership of football clubs.
Question number 11. We also asked the board to examine creating a share ownership structure that could broaden ownership of the club and could potentially provide an injection of cash. Can you update us on how this is progressing? What's up with that?
Because I'm sure that they will do when they formulated it. When Tottenham Hotspur's
say Levy comes back and says, we'll be able to give you an answer on that, say April.
I'm not advocating that there's a right and way wrong to it. And by the way, I just want to qualify my comment on a crappy stadium. It was a crappy stadium in comparison with what you've got now. Right, it wasn't a crappy stadium because I owned a crappy stadium, or I owned a football club that played in a crappy stadium, so I know what one looks like. Right, by comparison, it's not crappy, but by comparison to what you've got now, it is. I just feel that you'd be better served. Yeah. I do think Tottenham should communicate. I do think it gives them an element of entitlement and revs up the entitlement that if you don't communicate with them at all. Yeah. And I don't understand why Daniel wouldn't want to, and I don't understand why Daniel wouldn't deploy someone to have a fans forum once a month and shut these guys down. But I can promise you, as sure as day follows night, whatever answer you give won't be satisfactory and will be followed by the next set of questions, because unless you tell fans exactly what they want to hear, and that's a moving feast, that's like nailing a jelly to the wall, unless you tell them you're going to go and do what Newcastle are doing, you're going to go and do what Man City have done, you're going to go and do what Man United do, which is spend hundreds of millions of pounds of players, you're not going to satisfy these fans. Okay. It's an unwinnable conversation.
I think it's fair. I think the questions are fair, and I think they are due answers to the questions they're asking.
Maybe they are.
Do you feel the Tottenham fans are right to ask questions? 08717 223344. McConkey in Belfast is saying, Simon, you're not a Spurs fan, so you don't understand how we feel. We want success. We don't want Anthony Joshua fighting concerts or American football in our stadium. We want to see success. We want trophies. McConkey, I get where you're coming from.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the TalkSport app and on your smart speaker. TalkSport.